We're with Les Gutches, who's being inducted this weekend as a distinguished member of the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Les, tell me your thoughts when you heard that the Hall of Fame was inviting you out to give you this honor this year.
I was surprised and excited. Unbelievable honor. It's the highlight of my career.
Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in wrestling back when you were a youth in Oregon.
Oh, yeah. I was 7 years old, and my dad was off at work. He was working in a mill at the time, and I was just going through some of my family's pictures and little box of mementos and found some pictures of my dad wrestling and some trophies, some medals, and asked my mom what that was about. And she said, well, why don't you ask your dad when he gets home? And Dad got home, and I asked him, and he kind of shook the sawdust out of his clothing and moved the coffee table out of the front room and started showing me holds right there. And ironically, the first movie he ever showed me was a cradle, and I never got that in competition.
Didn't quite have the long arms and legs for that one. So did you enjoy it? Is that why you started pursuing it pretty hard when you were young?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I liked it, and my family's a wrestling family, and I had a certain amount of success to start out with, and that helps keep your interest, especially as a 7, 8-year-old kid. But yeah, I liked it from the start, and I definitely had an aptitude for it, and really glad that I ran across those medals that day.
Now, you had some pretty good coaching as a young person. Tell us a little bit about some of the mentors that brought you along as a young athlete.
Oh yeah, I had an unbelievable amount of luck in my career, and a lot of that had to do with the coaches that I had and the people that I crossed paths with. I was coached by Sergio Gonzalez, who was a 1972 Olympic team member. Pete Lucas, who was a great wrestler for Portland State. I had the opportunity to work out with Mark and Dave Schultz while I was in college, and owe all of those people a lot of the successes that I had.
Now, you competed often in freestyle and Greco as a youth, and beyond. A lot of kids, they're just doing the folk style right now. What was it, the experience of wrestling on a national level in the international styles, and how'd that make you a better wrestler?
Well, I think first and foremost, I mean, the freestyle and Greco, I mean, I was kind of a gym rat, or a mat rat, whatever you want to call it. If I could find a Sambo tournament, I would go wrestle in the Sambo tournament. But definitely Greco, freestyle, any collegiate tournament I could find. I just think that a certain amount of sports and wrestling is learning how to compete and being in different match situations and learning how to deal with those situations and come out on top. And I think you can learn how to compete in a variety of different styles, and there's carryover to each one. But secondly, I think the big thing that freestyle and Greco did for me was I made that, I think I made a Greco world team as a cadet. And once I went overseas and got some international competition and realized that I was on par with that level. When I came back to Oregon, it seemed a lot smaller. And so it just gave me a lot more confidence.
I'll talk a little bit about the decision to go to Oregon State and your wrestling career there.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. I'm sitting here in Stillwater. Jose recruited me. I came out here and met Randy Couture and Chris Barnes and Kenny Monday and John Smith, and I was sold. I was coming to Oregon State, or the other OSU. I was going to Oklahoma State.
Cowboy.
Yep, and I got home, and once the signing date came, I signed it, and I called Jose and said, hey, I signed the letter of intent, and I'm ready to come out. He said, well, do you want me to send somebody out there, or do you just want to throw it in the mail? I said, no, don't send anybody out. I'll throw it in the mail, and that'll save a plane trip and somebody's time. And so I signed that letter of intent. I put it in an envelope, stamped it, put it in my mom's purse, and said, hey, Mom, when you go to the post office tomorrow, go ahead and throw this in the mail. She said, okay. Well, I went to bed that night, woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. I just did. I don't know why. I all of a sudden was really doubting my decision. And right at about that moment, Mark Johnson called, who was the Oregon State coach at that time. And I told him what I'd done, and he said, what? Are you crazy? I'm going to be down there. I'm going to be down there in 2.5 hours. You have your stuff ready. You're coming up to Oregon State, and we're going to take a visit. You're going to take a visit here. And I said, well, okay. And so I went in, and I tore up that Oklahoma State letter of intent. Johnson was down there at my doorstep and picked me up, and we went back up to Corvallis, and I signed a letter of intent there.
While you were in college, you were very successful, won the NCAAs a few times. Tell us your thoughts and your memories of your college career as far as on the national level and things that you're most proud of.
Oh, wow. Well, definitely, I went into my sophomore year seeded number 1 to the NCAA tournament and got beat and ended up 5th. And that really stuck with me. I definitely worked very hard, that spring and that summer and the entire next year, and it was sitting in my belly, and I wasn't very happy about that 5th place finish. And so the next year when I came back as a junior, and I had an undefeated season and capped that off with a national championship, it was an unbelievable feeling, because that was something that I had in my sights for a long time. I had my heroes like Mark and Dave Schultz, and guys like Royce Alger and Kevin Jackson, and those guys around my weight. I'd seen them win NCAA titles, and I really wanted one of those for myself. And I had to go through some adversity to get there, and had that year when it was really in my grasp, and I let it slip away. And so my junior year, when I finally had my hand raised there in the finals, it was really an unparalleled feeling.
Freestyle wrestling, you went right into the national scene while in college, and after your senior year in college, you were able to go and make an Olympic team and beat one of our greatest wrestlers, Kevin Jackson, to make that team. Tell us a little bit about that spring and summer, and what worked, what was able to go right for Les Gutches in 1996.
Well, I think as far as 1996 goes, that was the reason I was able to jump right in and make that transition at, I guess, a relatively early age, was the fact that I'd been wrestling freestyle and Greco since I was... I'd been wrestling those styles since I was 10. And so, I'd wrestled on up through the cadet, the junior level, back then it was the Espoir level, the university level, and national championships and world championships, and almost every one of those competed in the championships at every one of those levels. And so when I got to the our senior level, I was I had some experience, and I knew how to wrestle parterre, and I think all that experience when I was younger carried over and helped me make that transition earlier.
Now, Olympics obviously wasn't your goal. You were 7th, you were not able to win a medal, but did you learn anything from that helped you the next step of your career? I mean, obviously it was here in the United States, which had to have been pretty special to wrestle in Atlanta.
Oh, of course. I mean, I was walking through the Hall of Fame last night, and this great night that I'm being honored and having being placed into the Hall of Fame. I still walk through that little Olympic section they had there. Just kind of mumbling under my breath, a certain amount of regret. I was 7th at the Olympic Games, and I think my youth really showed there. I made a few mistakes, and certainly didn't help that was my first big senior level world championship level event. Would have been nice to have some more experience with the referees and some of those other competitors. I was obviously disappointed, and again, kind of like my sophomore year of college, having that goal that was so close, one that you'd wanted for so long, being pulled away and not hitting the mark. I came back the next year in '97 with a little more fire and ready to go, and knowing that I belonged at that level, and having confidence that if I went and performed, I could come home with the hardware in the World Championship, and that's just what I was able to do in Russia, of all places.
Yeah. That was
a
about the farthest place in the world.
Yeah, but a great place to win.
Yeah, and you were able to win another world medal 2 years later as a bronze, and talk a little bit about the challenge of having to beat the Russians and the Iranians and just the top wrestlers in the world, and what kind of commitment that was for you and for your teammates.
It was a huge commitment. I mean, I look back at, you mentioned my teammates. I mean, one thing I have to say is You know, I don't miss the workouts every day. I don't miss the cutting weight and you know, the injuries. But I really miss that group of guys that I competed with. You know, I couldn't start to name them all, but you know, guys like, you know, Lincoln McElravy and Kerry Colat and you know, Steve Marianetti, and you know, watching Stephen Neal win a world championship, and Iran and Kerry McCoy and all those. That's the thing I really miss, is hanging out with a bunch of guys who have similar goals and similar outlooks on life and wrestling, and just being in a group of like-minded people that you get along with so well. I miss that part of it. But to answer your question, you know, what was it like to compete against the Russians and the Iranians and the Cubans? You know, it was great. It was a challenge. It was unbelievably tough, especially. I look back, you know, I thought Russia would have been the hardest place to compete, but for me, by far, that Iranian trip was that was a tough tournament to compete in, and the Iranians were fired up, and it was a tough venue, and I look at that as being that was a very challenging place to be and compete. But you know, to mention, you know, the travels that we had. I mean, during my, you know, that quadrennium,
right.
We went from Atlanta, which was about the friendliest place you could ever be, besides the Olympic Park bombing and a few of the other things that went on. But you know, you go to Krasnoyarsk, Siberia. I took a tour to Cuba, which was a great place, I thought. But definitely off the beaten path as far as Americans go. We went to Iran, we went to Turkey, you know, tours to Ukraine, you name it. And those were great experiences, you know, not just the travel, but getting to talk to people and experiencing other cultures. And for me, it really, those travels have given me friends across the world, across the globe, but also when I see world events and when I see things unfolding, I definitely look at them with a different lens and a different perspective, because I've been to a lot of these places and I know the people, you know, I know the people, I know the cultures, and I'm really appreciative of that.
So do you put your wrestling experience to work in your business career? I mean, are there lessons that you learned through the process of being a champion athlete that you've been able to translate into your workplace?
Without a doubt. You know, Dan Gable says that, I've heard Dan Gable quoted as saying, after you've wrestled, everything else is easy. And I totally agreed with that until I had kids. I'd like to invite him to come babysit my kids for me and see if he still says that. But no, that's really true. I mean, in sports in general, but I think especially individual sports and combative sports in particular, which wrestling is certainly one. It teaches you how to work hard. It teaches you how to stay the course in spite of adversity. It teaches you how to work hard for something now that's going to be a year down the road, or 2 years, or 5 years. And you know, most importantly, it teaches you how to compete. Because even though you know, we don't have a lot of those competitive opportunities in school and growing up, as many as we should, I think. But man, when you get out in the real world, there's a lot of people who want the same thing, and you have to find a way to rise to the top and compete. And you know, the business world is no different. And so I think definitely those experiences have helped me.
Well, Les Gutches, thank you for your time and congratulations on your honor.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.